RPE. RPE. Rate of perceived effort. Let's dig into first what it is. Why does it matter? What do I mean when I say rate of perceived effort, or RPE? Well, simply put, it is your own subjective rating of how hard something feels. And it can be highly influenced. It's influenced by things like muscle fatigue, heart rate, breathing, heat, terrain, hydration, even psychological stress. But it is wrapped up with all of those things, a holistic signal. That's very different than your Garmin, and it adapts in real time. It was actually first formalized by a scientist called Gunnar Borg. You might have heard of the Borg scale. That's back in the 1980s. He had a scale of perceived effort from 6 to 20. Quite commonly, also people do 1 to 10. It's more simplistic, it's more understandable, but 6 to 20, both of them are scientifically valid. But in truth, Gunnar Borg was not the first person to think about perceived effort. It's been used for centuries, long before wearables existed. We've had on a show before a scientist that's really famous in endurance sports, Dr. Steven Seiler, an American that's based up in Scandinavia. He's a leading endurance researcher. And I really like what he talks about when he refers to RPE. He always points to the pointy end of the sport, elite athletes. And he highlights that elite athletes are consistently, constantly, all the time, leveraging RPE to regulate their training, especially the easy work. And he feels like RPE as the governor is critical because it protects the intent of the session. From my perspective, as I referred to it earlier, I view RPE as almost your athletic compass. Metrics are incredibly valuable for us, but RPE is the thing that's going to unlock and teach you a sense of pacing, effort management, and ultimately resilience. But what are some of the common mistakes and misconceptions around perceived effort? Let's dig into what often goes wrong for athletes when they think about RPE or, as we're going to find out, don't think about RPE. Number one, I think, is really important, which is the most common thing that I see, an over-reliance on metrics. I've had athletes tell me, I don't know how it felt because I didn't have my metrics with me. How do you feel this morning, Big Ron? I don't know, my Whoop ran out of batteries. And that's a problem. That's dependency, because you're just taking data, information, and letting that govern how you feel. Steve Magnus, another great coach, calls RPE the most honest system we have. And I like that. Honesty, integrity in effort. If you train by feel, he suggests, you deliver or develop awareness, mental strength. Alex Hutchinson has written that the limiters in endurance sport are rarely physical. They're perceptual. And if that's the truth, the fact that you slow down because it feels too hard, not because your body can't go on, doesn't it make sense that you would try and get in tune with those feelings and start to understand them? When athletes obsess over that word specificity and locking into really, really rigid training zones, devices, data, they often miss the bigger picture of what's going on. And here's the truth. If you're an athlete of any level, world class all the way down to beginner, performance is really, really messy. It's not something that's linear. It is not like baking a cake where you put the precise ingredients in the right order, you mix them up, you put them in the oven at the right temperature for the right time, and hey presto, you would deliver a wonderful Victoria sponge. Equally, it's not like building a bridge where you go through the architectural drawings with the exact angles, the exact design, and you are going to have a robust, rigid, scientifically valid bridge. That's not what performance is. It's chaotic, it's messy, and it's influenced by a host of factors out there. In fact, when we thought about it, we talked about terrain, heat stress, environment, psychological stress, and all the time your body is giving you something. It's giving you signals. internal signals. But if you can't listen to those signals because you're just wholly reliant on data and information that your metrics are giving you, you'll never learn to listen. So what we want to do is shift our reliance on RPE. We want to integrate this and develop the skill. It is a skill. It is not something that is intuitive. It's not something that happens by magic. It's something that you need to work on. But as over time, you do develop self-awareness, you do start to establish an internal compass. You start to take of all the different situations, the different levels of fatigue, the different state of physiological readiness. We have to realize that stress is stress is stress, and it accumulates. And when you start to develop this inner awareness, you get several benefits as an athlete. When you become better at listening to your body, you actually are unlocked to pace more effectively. You're more equipped to avoid injury and burnout. You make better decisions on the fly. And you actually ultimately handle heat, fatigue, and global stress better. And in many ways, if we go to what they call Judgment Day, racing, that's what it really is about. Because we must prepare for our races. We need to train consistently. We need to get as fit as we can. We also want to arrive as systemically and mentally as fresh as we can, fit and fresh. But when we're actually racing, what we're looking to do is to distribute our fitness to give us the best speed possible over the course of the distance, whether you're racing a 5K, whether you're racing a 10K, whether you're racing a marathon, whether you're doing an Ironman. And so that requires a certain sense of pacing. You also are going to consistently throughout the day need to have to make decisions. Do I push on here? Do I back off? What's going on? How's my body doing? And at the same time, we're doing this in an external environment where you've got heat, humidity, wind, and it's a very stressful situation. And so if you are locked in and you are guided by perceived effort and then leveraging your metrics, and we're going to talk about that as well, you are going to be better at that skill. Every single elite athlete that I've ever worked with is obsessed with perceived effort. Now, they all leverage power meters and GPS monitors and heart rate monitors, etc. Yet, perceived effort is the driver. And guess what? When I talk about this, you don't need to believe me. You don't need to trust me on this one, because research consistently validates this. There was a study in 2010, it's a robust study by Dr. Mauger, and he showed that when runners are guided by perceived effort, they ultimately outperform those that were governed by either heart rate or pace. And this was consistently shown across levels of athlete, across genders. Why? Because they self-regulated. They unlocked and had the liberty, the freedom to listen to their body. Now, this can become even more important for females. Female athletes, as Stacey Sims points out, shows how crucial it is to feel training effort, particularly during hormonal fluctuations. This occurs, of course, during perimenopause and menopause. It also occurs on a monthly basis for all female athletes. Perceived effort, as Stacey points out, provides the nuance that metrics just cannot capture. It's impossible to capture. So in other words, perceived effort is the thing that makes you adaptable, more aware, and ultimately more resilient. The thing we want to dig into, though, is, sure, perhaps you're persuaded by this. How do we actually train it? How do we develop it in a really practical sense? Because it's okay for me to sit in this wonderful studio and performance center in San Francisco and say, use perceived effort, it's really important.